Welcome ladies and gentlemen, my name's Chronicles here on this Destiny 2 video, and today we're going to be taking a look at one of my favorite Arc PvE Hunter builds for Destiny 2. So this build is actually really strong and has been really strong for a very long time, and is also quite simple. It's built around the Arcstaff Super with the Raiden Flux exotic armor, which has, like I said before, been around since the beginning of the game. Now Arcstaff is very resistant, has large AoE attacks, and deals really good damage. And Raiden Flux enhances your super to deal more damage and last longer with successive hits on targets, which if you ever used it, you know that you're basically unstoppable and you last a really long time. I'm really resisting the urge to make a joke here to stay professional. Anyways, the armor mods, exotic, and subclass will be the focus of this build and can be used with most weapon setups. I just happen to really like this particular weapon setup. And of course, I use this build for any PvE from Patrol to Master Nightfalls and is endgame viable. However, there are better options for the endgame. Moving on, let's talk about these specs. For the class and subclass, it's going to be the Hunter Arc Way of the Wind. Now I know a lot of people will probably use Way of the Warrior. I'll be talking about why that the Way of the Wind is better in my opinion in a little bit. I personally like using skip grenades, marksman's dodge, and triple jump. Pretty much any of these is up to you. I just find that skip grenade ends up doing more damage in the long run. I like using skip grenade, marksman's dodge, and triple jump. You can use anything you want for these. I personally find that skip grenade does the most damage. For my guns, I like using Mountaintop, last word, and pretty much any of the good swords these days like falling guillotine. Now, like I said before, the weapons are not really that important. However, a lot of the armor mods will be based on grenade launchers and swords. So just make the appropriate mod changes wherever you're using. Up next, we have the armor mods, often the most sophisticated, complex, and important part of any build. The general idea with this build is you want to get special ammo, grenade launcher, intellect, and super based mods. Most of these things should be pretty straightforward. I tried to optimize them as much as possible to fit as much as possible into a small space. Your charge with light comes from taking charge, which is from the orbs of light, and of course potentially from your teammates. If your teammates are sharing charge with light with mods like Radiant Light or Powerful Friends, which again I didn't really realize Powerful Friends help your teammates get more charge with light, but that's actually really strong. And with things like stacks on stacks and supercharger, you can get 4 stacks of charge with light very quickly and then use your grenade with energy converter to then convert the charge of light to super energy. Now personally, I find that energy converter is really not that strong. You're not going to be getting that much super, and of course it is capped out at 50%. So if you have more than 50% of your super, it doesn't do anything. So this could easily be changed out to a high energy fire because it's the same number of points for energy converter as it is for energy fire. However, I did want to try something different with this particular build, and you may find that you like this more than high energy fire. Next up, let's talk about the gameplay, because often how you use the build is just as often as important as how you build the build. First up, for the weapons, your kinetic weapon, Mountaintop or Witherhoard, whatever weapon you're using, I recommend these two, is used for elite and boss enemies as well as grouped fodder enemies. And because of their great ammo economy, they're great endgame options, which is often what you need in the much higher endgame. Is you need weapons with a lot of total ammo damage, which is why sometimes Cold Heart is not the worst idea in the world, although that's not what I'm recommending. That is just something that I thought would be interesting. Your energy weapon, your sidearm, has a very high DPS versus kills per clip ratio and is very powerful in this meta. This is a question I get asked all the time. Why do I favor sidearms in this meta? Why do I like the burst sidearms in this meta? The idea is that it has very high DPS and it has a very high number of kills per clip as compared to something like the Recluse, which has good DPS, albeit very slightly less DPS than sidearms, and also can only get around maybe 0 to 2 kills per clip, whereas these burst sidearms get anywhere from 1 to 4 kills per clip, which in my opinion is much better, a lot less time reloading, a little bit better DPS, and around the same amount of range. Your heavy weapon should be used to break matching shields and of course DPS burst strong enemies and bosses. In endgame activities, you'll often find that you need more special ammo, and in this current meta, we have a pretty dominant exotic special in PvE, so make sure to have 1 to 2 people on your team with special ammo finisher for guaranteed special ammo. And if that's going to be you, either replace Dynamo or Dire Artillery with special ammo finisher. Up next, for your subclass, your Arcstaff Super has high resistance, large AoE attacks, and deals really good damage. And with that, the Raiden Flux, as I mentioned before, enhances your super to deal more damage and last longer with successive hits, which again, I will not be making a joke here, but you know what I was going for. On top of that, your subclass is also a lot of great endgame bonuses. First of all, your dodge resists more damage in and out of your super. Your melee disorients targets, which helps shutting down elites no matter how hard they are. You get a faster top speed on your sprint, and you also get more grenade and melee energy from being critically wounded, which works really well when you need to use your grenade with the energy converter to be able to get that super energy. The Way of the Warrior subclass is that other alternative, does a little bit more damage in the super attacks, but is very melee based, and otherwise melee is not good for endgame activities. Next up, let's talk about your subclass. Your Arc Super, first of all, is very high. Can't stop itching yourself. I'm trying to make a voiceover. Thank you. Up next for your subclass, your Arc Super has high resistance, large AoE attacks, and deals really good damage. Raiden Flux enhances your super to deal more damage and last longer with successive hits, so it is definitely a critical part and very important for this build. On top of that, the rest of your subclass also has a lot of great endgame viable bonuses. For example, your dodge resists more damage in and out of your super, your melee disorients targets, which is really helpful for shutting down elites no matter how hard they are. You also get a faster top sprint speed, which is really nice, and more grenade and melee energy just from being critically wounded, which in high level play you're just getting wounded all the time. The Way of the Warrior subclass, oftentimes the alternative, has a little bit more damage with your super attacks, but is otherwise very melee based, and of course that's not very strong or viable in endgame activities. And lastly, let's talk about the alternatives. Your weapons are not really a critical part of this build and can be really used with anything. This is just a great loadout that I use these days. Just make sure you make the appropriate mod changes. Your armor mods can be changed to be focused with high energy fire instead of energy transfer, as I mentioned before, because ET is just a little bit weak. Your subclass can be changed to Way of the Warrior, as I mentioned before, but is not really worth it in my opinion, and of course your exotic is a critical part of this build. And yeah, that is going to be pretty much the end of it. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions, concerns, if you had an alternative to this, or you think another Arc Hunter build is going to be better for PvE, or if you have alternatives for PvE, or you just wanted to say, hi, I really like the shape of squares. Let me know in the comments down below. Of course, my name is Nightcrawler. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll see you guys on the next one.